Arizona, a place known for its endless deserts, lonely highways, and stories that refuse to die. For more than 15 years, Jake Miller had been driving buses across Route 66, night after night, week after week. The road never changed, the desert never changed, and neither did Jake's routine. But in October of 2019, something happened that would change his life forever. Something that still has no explanation. Because every Friday night, at exactly 11:47 p.m., a passenger appeared where no passenger should have been. And according to security cameras, that passenger never entered the bus. It was a cold Friday night. Jake was driving his usual route through the Arizona desert. The highway was empty, not a single car in sight, just darkness stretching for miles. As the bus rolled through the night, Jake noticed something strange ahead. A figure, standing beside an old bus stop. At first he thought it was impossible. That stop had been abandoned for more than 20 years. Nobody used it anymore. Nobody even lived nearby. Yet there he was, a man standing completely alone in the darkness, waiting, as if he knew the bus was coming. Jake slowed down. The headlights illuminated the figure. The man wore a long black overcoat, a dark fedora hat. That stop had been abandoned for more than 20 years. Nobody used it anymore. Nobody even lived nearby. Yet there he was, a man standing completely alone in the darkness, waiting, as if he knew the bus was coming. Jake slowed down. The headlights illuminated the figure. The man wore a long black overcoat, a dark fedora hat, and in his hand, he carried an old brown suitcase. Something about him felt wrong. Not threatening, just wrong. Still, Jake opened the door. The passenger stepped inside, without saying a single word, without making eye contact, without showing any emotion. He simply handed Jake a ticket. Jake looked down. It wasn't a normal ticket. It was made of paper, the kind of ticket the company had stopped using many years ago. Before Jake could ask any questions, the man walked toward the back of the bus and sat in the last row. The entire ride, he never moved, never looked around, never spoke. He simply stared forward, as if he was waiting for something. The following Friday, at exactly 11:47 p.m., the same thing happened. The same abandoned stop, the same man, the same suitcase, the same silence. And then it happened again the week after that, and again, and again. Every Friday, always at the exact same time. Jake couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was this man? Where did he come from? And why was he using a bus stop that had been abandoned for decades? The questions kept piling up, but the answers never came. Every Friday, always at the exact same time. Jake couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was this man? Where did he come from? And why was he using a bus stop that had been abandoned for decades? The questions kept piling up, but the answers never came. Eventually, Jake told his co-workers about the strange passenger. Most of them laughed. Some thought he was joking. Others blamed the long night shifts. You're seeing things. You're tired. Get some sleep. That was their advice. But Jake knew what he had seen, so he decided to prove it. The next night, he went to the depot and pulled up the security footage. The bus cameras recorded everything. Every passenger, every stop, every movement. The truth had to be there. Jake loaded the footage and started watching. The abandoned bus stop appeared on the screen. The bus door opened. Jake waited and waited, but nobody entered. His heart started beating faster. He replayed the footage, again and again and again. The result never changed. The door opened. Nobody stepped inside. Yet a few moments later, the mysterious passenger was already sitting in the last row. Jake froze. He leaned closer to the screen. Maybe he had missed something. Maybe there was a camera glitch. But there wasn't. Frame by frame, second by second, the man simply appeared. No entrance, no movement, no explanation. Just there, as if he had materialized out of thin air. Jake watched the footage over and over again, trying to find a logical answer, but none existed, and for the first time, he felt genuinely afraid. That night he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the passenger sitting alone in the back of the bus, silent, motionless, watching, and deep down, Jake knew something wasn't right, because if the passenger never entered the bus, then who was sitting in the last row? The mystery consumed Jake. Every Friday the same man appeared. Every Friday the same impossible routine repeated itself. And after seeing the security footage, Jake knew he couldn't ignore it anymore. He needed answers, no matter where they led. The next Friday, Jake made a decision. He wasn't going to let the passenger disappear again. He was going to follow him. Just after midnight, the bus stopped as usual. The mysterious passenger stood up, picked up his old suitcase, and stepped into the darkness. Jake waited a few seconds, then quietly followed. The desert was cold, silent, empty. The only sound was the wind moving across the sand. For nearly 20 minutes, Thomas walked without looking back, deeper and deeper into the desert, away from roads, away from civilization, away from anywhere a normal person would go. Jake stayed far behind, trying not to be noticed. Then suddenly, Thomas stopped, completely still. Jake froze. The desert became silent. Even the wind seemed to disappear. Slowly, Thomas began turning around. For the first time, Jake saw his face clearly, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The man's eyes were completely black. Not dark, not shadowed. Black. Like empty holes staring directly into his soul. Jake couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Then his flashlight flickered. Once, twice, 3 times.
No!
Darkness swallowed everything, and when the light returned, Thomas was gone. There were no footprints, no movement, no sign he had ever been there. Only silence. The next morning, Jake drove straight to the sheriff's office. Most officers dismissed his story immediately, but one person didn't. Sheriff Emma Brooks. As soon as Jake described the man, her expression changed. She became very quiet. Then she asked one question. Was he carrying an old brown suitcase? Jake's heart skipped a beat. He nodded. Emma stood up immediately, without saying another word. She walked into the records room. Several minutes later, she returned carrying an old newspaper. The paper looked decades old, yellowed by time. Emma placed it on the desk. Jake looked down and felt his stomach drop. The headline read, Route 66, Bus Crash Kills 17 Passengers. Date, October 17th, 1997. Jake stared at the photograph printed beneath the article. Among the victims stood a man wearing a black overcoat, holding a brown suitcase. The exact same face, the exact same man, Thomas Hale. But according to the newspaper, Thomas Hale had died 22 years ago, and suddenly, the impossible mystery became even more terrifying. Jake couldn't stop staring at the newspaper. The photograph was unmistakable. The same face, the same overcoat, the same suitcase. Thomas Hale. But according to official records, Thomas Hale had died 22 years ago. Jake looked at Sheriff Emma. That's impossible. Emma took a deep breath. Then she began telling him the story. On October 17th, 1997, a late-night Route 66 bus disappeared during a powerful desert sandstorm. 17 people lost their lives. Among them was a traveling salesman named Thomas Hale. Rescue teams recovered most of the victims. But Thomas was different. His body was never found, only his suitcase. For years, locals whispered about strange sightings. Truck drivers claimed they saw a man walking alone through the desert at night. Travelers reported seeing someone standing beside the abandoned bus stop, always carrying a suitcase, always wearing a black coat. Most people dismissed the stories as local legends. Until now, because Jake had seen him with his own eyes. And suddenly, Those stories didn't seem like legends anymore. The following Friday, Jake returned to the route. He needed answers. As expected, Thomas boarded the bus. Silent, motionless, just like every other week. And once again, Jake followed him into the desert. This time, Thomas led him farther than before. The moon hung high above the empty landscape. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Then Thomas stopped near the edge of a canyon. Jake carefully moved closer, and that's when he saw it, hidden beneath decades of sand. A rusted wreck, twisted metal, broken windows, faded paint. The remains of the 1997 Route 66 bus. Jake's heart pounded. He had finally found it. The place where everything ended. Or perhaps, the place where something never truly ended. Thomas slowly approached the wreck. For the first time, he seemed different. Not frightening, not dangerous, just sad. Then something unexpected happened. The old suitcase slipped from his hand and fell open. Letters scattered across the sand. Old photographs, personal belongings, a wedding ring, pieces of a life that had never made it home. Suddenly, Jake understood. Thomas wasn't haunting the route. He wasn't trying to scare anyone. He wasn't seeking revenge. He was trying to finish something. Something he never got the chance to complete. His final journey. The next day, Jake and Sheriff Emma began investigating the contents of the suitcase. The letters led them to a woman named Olivia Hale, Thomas's daughter. She had been only 6 years old when her father disappeared. For more than 20 years. She never knew what truly happened to him. When Jake arrived at her home, he placed the suitcase on the table. Olivia opened it carefully. Then she saw the photographs, the letters, and finally, the wedding ring. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time in decades, a missing piece of her life had returned. Among the belongings was a letter. A letter Thomas had written shortly before the accident. A letter that was supposed to reach his family, but never did. Now, after 22 years, it finally arrived. And somehow, that felt important. Very important. 1 week later, Friday night arrived again. Jake drove his usual route through the desert. 11:47 p.m., the abandoned bus stop appeared ahead. Jake slowed the bus. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. He waited and waited, but nobody appeared. No black overcoat, no suitcase, no silent passenger. The bus stop was empty, completely empty. For the first time in months, Thomas Hale was gone. Jake smiled. Maybe the journey was finally over. He started the bus again, but just before pulling away, something caught his attention. A small piece of paper resting on the last seat. Jake walked toward it, his heart racing. It was an old bus ticket, the same kind Thomas always carried. Slowly, Jake picked it up and read the words written across it. "Thank you for the ride." Jake stared at the message, unable to speak, unable to move. Then he looked out the window. Far beyond the desert, far beyond the road, a figure stood beneath the moonlight. Thomas Hale. For one final moment, the man raised his hand, as if saying goodbye. Then he disappeared, not into darkness, not into fear, but into peace, and he was never seen again. Some people believe ghosts remain because they are angry. Others believe they stay because they are lost. But maybe sometimes they stay because they still have one last thing left to do. One last promise. One last journey. One last goodbye. And maybe all they need is someone willing to help them reach the end of the road. Because not every ghost story ends with terror. Sometimes it ends with peace.